Welcome back to Turbo Tamizhan, folks. Today I brought you my, I guess the newer Mini Cooper in my garage. It's an F56 MINI Cooper S, significantly different from the previous generation, the R56. Today I'm going to talk to you about what's there to it, what the common problems are, and some little quirks and features that these cars can have, and go from there. Starting off from the front end, does not look a whole lot different from the older generation of Mini Coopers, because has the quintessential bug-eye headlights in the front with an LED ring around it. Has copious treatments of chrome in the front end to complement this gorgeous color. It's called black cherry. Looks beautiful under the sun and in the shade likewise. This, in my opinion, is probably not the pinnacle of Mini Cooper engineering, which in my opinion is the R56, but this, in its own ways, has a lot of advantages. In a way, when I'm trying to think of it, it's German engineering, right? So prowess of Germans, with every single component of this car having gone through with German engineering, but just has the quirkiness, the English feature to it, where the way it looks, the way it drives, and it has like a taste of, the right amount of English taste to it with German engineering, which is a great combination when you come to think of it. Looking at the front end, does have a functional hood scoop up front for the intercooler. This does have a B48 engine in it, which is a BMW derived, or an out-and-out BMW engine, a 4-cylinder, 2-liter turbocharged engine. Plenty of power, never lets you feel lacking. Does have added cooling dams up front to ram the air into the intercooler, so to say. The thermal management on these cars are far better than the R-Series N14, N18, N16 motors. Coming to the side profile of this, the size and the form factor of the F56 is significantly larger than that of the R-Series cars. So you can apparently see, I'll show you a comparison between the two cars. The footprint of this car, though it's a two-door F56, it's significantly larger, and you can see the footprint, be it on the cabin or even outside. The way it's parked, it's a larger car, it's more comfortable. It's designed around being a runabout for a practical driver, where it can be fun as and when you please, but then it's also a much larger family saloon. It's not like an out-and-out R56, which is like, you know, just go have fun and not care about how and what you do when you gotta, you know, do any kind of family hauling or even grocery hauling for that matter. Coming around to the side profile of this, very no nonsense, doesn't have much to it. This is a pretty rare spec car. This has a slick top roof, does not have the panoramic roof in it, which is a good thing, because sunroof drains can cause water ingress into the carpets and the footwell modules, which the R-Series cars are fabled for, or infamous for, and can wreak all kind of havoc. This does not have the panoramic roof, does have the slick roof package. It has tints all around, so has a nice blackout dark kit, black mirrors, black headlight rings, black alloys. So this car is a black on black on black. Black wheels, black interior, and black cherry color. Looks black in certain angles, but my wife thinks it looks more purpley under the sun. Side angle is pretty much no nonsense. Does not have the comfort axis. This car has the same frameless, pillarless windows and door sills on this car as well. Nice 17-inch alloys. Pretty harsh to ride though, in my opinion. Way harsher than an R-Series car, but I don't know if that's how F-Series cars run. I've had a few of these F-Series cars, and every single one's never been, it doesn't have the flair of a Mini Cooper, so to say. That's quintessentially what's wrong with an F-Series car. It's practical, it's a well-rounded car, which is what doesn't add up in my head. A Mini Cooper should not be practical. It should not be, it should not do anything good but just the go-kart feel of a Mini Cooper. This is a well-designed car, which is what I feel is lacking when it comes to a Mini Cooper. It's practical, it drives well, it's reliable to a certain extent. All of these things and the badge Mini Cooper do not go hand in hand. Moving on to the back end of this quirky automobile, the same blackout treatment except for the beltline chrome garnish you see, the number plate garnish, the rear roof spoiler, which looks nicer on the R56s, but this does have a nice twin pipe catback exhaust system with the diffuser down here with the fog lights, which I think looks decent enough. But the talking point of this car is this Union Jack tail lights, which look amazing at night. The Union Jack kind of, I guess, in its name itself, it's self-explanatory, where it mimics the Union Jack of the United Kingdom's flag, and which is kind of quintessentially British. That's pretty much what it has. Has the nice Cooper S badge over here, and sounds relatively, has a nice grumble to it. Unlike the R56, which sounds like a Mini, this sounds more like a BMW, so to say. Not much to the rear end other than some license plate lights and an electronic unlock. The key is pretty cool, which I'll show you guys in a tad bit, but electronic lock, unlock. Does have plenty of room, does not have a spare tire, just has a puncture kit and the tool kit, so to say. These seats fold back pretty easily, give you a lot more room. This being the two-door, guys, of the Mini Cooper, does not have a lot of cargo room. You can get the F-Series car, which is called an F55 in the four-door, guys, which is a lot more practical, but nobody, in my opinion, buys Mini Coopers for them to be practical. They're impractical cars that are fun. You can't, you're not a Mini owner if you're not banging your head while you get in and get out of the car. Your thighs aren't cramping after a long drive, so your wife ain't complaining that it's too bumpy, and the AC isn't chill enough. So that's what a Mini Cooper is supposed to intrinsically feel like, unlike one of these practical, well put together cars. But I'll show you more about this, some features and things to look out for on these things, and let's go from there. Moving on to some common problems that these B38 3-cylinder 1.5 liters and the B48 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engines can have. They're very, very, very reliable. Unlike the infamous N-series motors from BMW in the past, the B-series engines are utterly, utterly, utterly good, except for a few issues that they can have, which pertain to plastic cooling components, which can wear or turn brittle with time and age. The primary suspects on these engines will be the oil coolers, the oil cooler housings, which are made out of plastic. There's a common steel or metal upgrade that you can do. There's a crossover pipe right beneath the intake manifold that can potentially leak. These are some items to look for. Apart from that, everything else is solid on these things. Turbos can develop some play, and the turbos are not nearly as easily as accessible as the N-series engines, which are right in the front, but these have it stuck between the rear of the engine and the firewall, so it's pretty labor intensive to get to the turbos. But apart from that, they're really good motors. Clutches, if you have a 6-speed manual, the last I've seen, some cars even have 150,000 miles on the original clutches, which is pretty darn good. This is a 6-speed auto, so it does not have the manual option, or this car does not have it, but it does have Tiptronic and sport mode, which makes the drive a lot more sprightly. So for common issues, that's all. Brakes are pretty easy to do, tires are easy. The battery access is a little limited, so you really have to be crafty when you're pulling it out of the firewall. Apart from that, there are a couple of recalls on this engine for a radiator cooling module that can go bad. Make sure you check that out before you buy it, and check for the biggest offender, which I forgot, thank God, is the front dog bone engine mount. These motors are known to eat through engine mounts like you would not believe. 20,000 miles is the typical lifespan. Before you know it, the rubber can degrade and completely go shot, and you will feel the motor starting every time there'd be a big jerk, and you know the front dog bone mount is toast. So take a look at that one dog bone mount in the front, and the oil cooler for any kind of leaks, oil or coolant. And a few other leaks to mention would be the balance shaft housing caps. They can seep from the right side of the motor, which is the closest to the passenger wheel, but it's not the easiest to actually see. So for engine and common problems, mechanical related items, that would be what we can talk of. This car is significantly different. I believe BMW and Mini put the most amount of work on the interior of the F-Series cars to make it significantly an upgrade from the R-Series cars, and it shows. The fit finish and the materials used, it's a lot more premium. Does carry forward a lot of the design language items that the R-Series cars had. The circular round items, from the AC vents to the steering wheel to the speedometer and all of that, you'd see that being carried over. Quirk on this car is you got to open the hood latch. To open the hood, you got to pull the hood latch twice. You got the boot release button over here. The power window switches are all up here instead of in the center console like the older cars. The more and more you get acquainted with this cabin, if you're familiar with BMW controls and switches, you'd see where they're taken right out of. They're all BMW carryover stuff. Moving on to the cabin itself, very, very aggressive seating position, a lot of lumbar, the under thigh support that you get. This does have a speedometer right at you, staring at your eyesight, unlike the R-Series cars, which had it in the center. This replaces it with a multimedia screen over here, which is kind of a nice option. The Harman Kardon music system in this car blasts, absolutely kicks butt. The start-stop function, or the engine start-stop button, is in the center as well. Apart from that, a very no-nonsense cabin. Does have some faux carbon fiber etching on some trims, which I think kind of looks out of place in this cabin. But overall, very, very well put together. This black cabin feels very roomy and comfortable, and everything seems like it's relatively reachable for the driver. And all the controls look quirky. They don't look over-engineered. Nothing feels excessively done, so to say. So as we go through, you can see the cruise control switches, the volume buttons, the indicator stalks, which are BMW stuff, the headlight controls right over here, the main tachometer, speedometer, the whole instrument cluster you got to be seeing over here, and the MID display. Like I said, you can go through the iDrive function through the knobs right by the handbrake, or the e-brake, so to say. And you got the shifter here, which is a pretty plain Jane BMW shifter. Does have heated seats, not heated steering. And then the seat controls are all manual. They're not automatic, but who cares, honestly. The biggest item to look for, so to say, is make sure the latches work. This is how you'd get in. And getting in and out of the rear seat is a real fun endeavor. I would not wish that even for my worst enemy, but it's still there for whoever cares about how and when they want to use it. Because the dark tint, it looks a little darker in the cabin, but it is what it is. You got to deal with it, right? At the end of the day. And you got the seat height functions, you got the recline over here, you got the under thigh bolster that comes out, the power window switches, like I said, over here, and we'll go for a drive and see what else there is to this car. Put it in drive, and nonchalantly gets going, and it's bonging because of the seatbelt controls, which I refuse to wear no matter when. I gotta reset the IRVM because my wife drove it last, and it's in her settings. It does not have memory seats or memory recall functions, so that is, I guess if you're accustomed to it from different cars, it can be a little bit of a pain, but plenty of power. I mean, definitely gets a move on. You can see the turbo kicks in. The B48 is no slouch and can keep up with pretty much any traffic. Brakes are fantastic. This has all new upgraded performance brakes around the car, all four corners. The seatbelt bonging on this car is just unbelievable. I can't even tell you how bad it is, but I still refuse to wear it. I'm not trying to be a stoic hero, but it is what it is. Pretty much that is all I had to talk about the driving, or the drivability of this car. Ride's pretty harsh, not very comfortable, so to say, but it is one of the better products to have come out of BMW stable overall in the last 10 to 15 years, because BMW's whole design team, I don't know what they've been up to with their large kidney grills and everything being out of proportion, just does not seem like the BMW of the ages that I grew up around with the E39 M5s and the E36 M3s, and just cars that truly made drivers happy. This does not accomplish that, but it's somewhat of a balance between the two. But that's about it. That's what I got for you today. Like, share, subscribe, do whatever you want to do, but I'll see you next time.